Today it is Mother's Day. I think I have completely lost my mind. Happy Mother's Day. Today is Mother's Day. How many of you know where it is Mother's Day? Back here in this corner here. Where?
In England.
In England. In England, it's Mother's Day. We're not sure how that date was selected, but there is significant evidence that would tell us that there may have been some confusion a long time ago when someone happened to mention that this is the middle Sunday in Lent. That perhaps someone mistook middle for mother. But Mother's Day in England is always the fourth Sunday in Lent. It is always that. And it is called there Mothering Sunday. And in the observance, not only is there the expression of love and thanksgiving relative to our moms, there also is in the church. If a church happened to be planted by another church, you have what you call a mother and a daughter church. Well, then people would return to the mother church. Or they would return to the church where they were dedicated or baptized or confirmed, whatever. Okay. So it's a day of great significance in England. It is the fourth Sunday in Lent, and as that, in some places, it is called Refreshment Sunday. It's a pause. It's a chance to pause and to see how we're doing with those goals that we have set for ourselves, what progress has been made, where we have faltered, how others are doing, and how we might uphold one another in prayer, be supportive to one another. And I don't know whether you're aware of this or not, but in the count of the traditional 40 days in the West, if you count those days, you will notice that you have far more than 40, and you say to yourself, well, now what happened here? It's because Sunday is never counted. Sunday is never a downer. Sunday is a day of praise. It's always a commemoration in miniature of the resurrection. And we come together with great joy. Let's look at our text, the Gospel of Luke in chapter 18. We have this account in the various Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. We have the children coming, and a lot of us are familiar with this. Who were these children? We're not sure. We are not sure. Were they children of the followers of Jesus? If you look at the word there in Luke, you note that they were infants. Well, infants cannot bring themselves. Someone else has to bring them. But if you look at the parallel passages of Mark and Matthew, you think that there may be included in that number children that were older. Some have dared to even speculate that children were bringing children, which has led still others to think in terms of children having children and unwed mothers bringing children. All this is very, very possible. But we don't know precisely who they are. Look at verse number 15. And they brought infants to him that he might touch them, but when the disciples saw it, they rebuked them. By some, they were rebuked. It's disruptive. Doesn't seem to be proper. I can tell you in church circles, among pastors, there often is this discussion about child dedication and who should be dedicated. Now we know it is not a sacrament of the church or an ordinance or a command. That is, it's not the same as baptism and the Lord's Supper. Yet invariably a church will take a stand as to who can stand there with the children and who can be at the side and who has a right to stand before the church. You wonder if some of that might be going on in the disciples' mind. Who are these children? Were they cleaned up? Were they dressed for the occasion? Were they in white? Were their faces dirty? Were their nose running? What was happening? What was happening? Who are these kids? Right? Make this suggestion to you. I don't think that the disciples were thinking about any of that. Because as you compare the parallel passages, they confessed and they acknowledged that something else was on their mind. They were talking about who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Who is the greatest? And they only acknowledged that when Jesus asked them about their thoughts and what they were talking about. And I think it's in the face of what they were thinking and what they were talking about and what they were rolling around. Who is the greatest? You had this annoying scene of children being brought to Jesus, infants. And they were quite outraged about it. And Jesus was greatly disturbed about their being disturbed. The Gospel of Luke chapter 18 verse 16. But Jesus called them, that is the children, to him and said, "Let the little children come to me, and do not forbid them, for of such is the kingdom of God." And he took those children, he beckoned them to come, he held them in his arms, he touched them, he prayed for them, and he blessed them. Is that not a beautiful scene? Can you picture that? You and I should bring our children regularly to Jesus. We should pray regularly for all the children that are under our influence, that they would come to Jesus and that they would be looking forward to the day when Jesus comes and establishes his kingdom. There will be those that are greatly annoyed, perturbed. They will say their reasons, but God will know the real reasons. And he will reach out his arms. Now I'll tell you what happened last week in church, in this building, right? Just love standing back there and see everybody just kind of huddling around one another and talking. I have a feeling you're talking about some light things and some serious things. I feel that you're encouraging one another. Perhaps you're rebuking one another. Perhaps you're praying for one another. That's so cool, all right? But back there was a little girl. She's a little over 1 year old. And Mrs. C, my wife, was holding her so that she was standing, was holding her two arms. And she, this little girl, was lifting her feet. And she was ready to pray. And I extended my arms. And she stood. And she took several steps, maybe 6, 7 steps, and then just kind of bowed down into my arms. Is that not a precious scene?
Yes.
Right?